The rain began early that morning, tracing thin rivers down the window pane of Danielle's small Boston apartment. It was the kind of rain that didn't ask permission to stay, quietly soaking into the sidewalks, into the bones of the city, into the spaces people didn't talk about. Daniel sat at his kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of black coffee, eyes fixed on the empty chair across from him. It had been 3 years since Emily had last sat there, legs tucked beneath her, wrapped in the hoodie she always stole from his closet. That chair hadn't moved since she left. Neither had he. Their story hadn't started in sadness. Quite the opposite. They met in the most laughable of cliques, reaching for the same poetry book in a downtown bookstore. She made a joke about fate, he made one about bad timing. She had wild curls and a laugh that made the whole row of shelves seem brighter. He wasn't sure what pulled him to her. Maybe it was the soft freckle just beneath her left eye, or maybe it was the way she said his name like it was a secret. Within a month, they were inseparable. Within a year, married. Those early days were all sunlight and ambition. He was an architect chasing deadlines and dream buildings. She was a painter, often covered in streaks of oil and charcoal, trying to translate her emotions into color. They built their home slowly, a second-hand couch here, a bookshelf rescued from the sidewalk there. They had nothing but youth and belief in each other, and for a while, that was enough. But life doesn't always respect the architecture of love. Cracks began to form, not all at once, but subtly. Missed dinners turned into forgotten anniversaries. Her art studio became her refuge, his office, his escape. He blamed stress. She blamed distance. Neither of them blamed themselves until it was too late. Daniel had never meant to fall into someone else's arms. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even passionate. It was hollow and fleeting and wrong. A colleague, a hotel, a single night. He regretted the moment it was over. But betrayal doesn't measure itself by how many times it happens, only that it did. He never told Emily. She found out through a receipt, an unfamiliar hotel charge in Chicago, when he was supposed to be in New York. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him, eyes emptied of all the colors he used to find in them. "Is there someone else?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. That single second was all the answer she needed. The divorce came fast, clinical, paperwork instead of conversations. She left the apartment with only a suitcase, her favorite books, and the silver teapot his mother had given them. He offered to fight for her, but she refused. "It's already broken," she said, and those words haunted him more than her silence. The years that followed weren't filled with anger, just a dull ache, a constant awareness of her absence. He dated, occasionally. Nobody stuck. Nobody laughed like Emily did, or danced barefoot in the kitchen, or stayed up all night to talk about the future. The apartment felt like a waiting room. His dreams became quiet things, unshared and unpainted. Emily moved to Cambridge, across the river, opened a small gallery. Her paintings shifted, less romantic, more abstract. Reviewers called her work bold, raw, evocative. She painted in shades of grief and resentment and memory. But even in her darkest pieces, there was always one stroke of blue, Danielle's favorite color. They didn't see each other. Not really. Once, he spotted her in a bookstore, standing in the same aisle where they had met. He watched her for a few seconds before walking away. Another time, she passed him at a crosswalk. Their eyes met, lingered, and then drifted apart. A lifetime of love condensed into a moment of silence. Then came the letter. It arrived without a stamp, slipped under his door like a secret. His name written in the handwriting he knew better than his own. "Dear Daniel, it's strange writing to you. I wasn't sure I ever would. I used to write letters to you in my head, back when the anger was loud and constant. But lately, I've just been remembering, not the end, the before. Do you remember the cabin in Maine? That weekend in October when you burned the pancakes and we ended up eating marshmallows and whiskey for breakfast? I think that's when I first knew I loved you. You made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. I've hated you. I've missed you. Sometimes both in the same breath. But I'm tired of hating. I'm tired of pretending the love disappeared just because we broke. There's a cafe on Walnut Street. Sunday, 4 p.m. I'll be there. If you come, we'll talk. If not, I'll understand. Love, Emily." He read it twice, then 3 more times, and when he folded the letter and placed it on the table, his hands were shaking. That Sunday, he arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. The place was nearly empty. He sat by the window, ordered black coffee, and stared at the door like it might open a portal to his past. When she finally walked in, he almost forgot how to breathe. She looked older, softer, somehow. Her hair shorter, clothes simpler. But her presence was unchanged. She carried her pain like a second skin. She sat down across from him without a word. He cleared his throat. You still hate me? She tilted her head. Some days. I deserve it, yes. But that doesn't mean I want to stay there. The conversation that followed wasn't easy. They unraveled slowly, talked about the years between, about her therapy, his guilt, her art, his isolation. They didn't try to fix anything that night, but they began to understand. And that was something. He walked her home. At her door, she paused and looked at him. I'm not asking for a second chance, she said. I just want to know if there's still something good left between us. There is, he said quietly. I've never stopped hoping there is. When she closed the door behind her, he stood there for several minutes, heart pounding like a drum that had just remembered how to play. They didn't speak for 2 weeks after that night, not because of discomfort or regret, but because both of them needed to breathe, to think, to sit with what had been said and what hadn't. Daniel found himself walking past the cafe every day. Once, he saw her inside alone, sketching in a small notebook, eyes unfocused as if she were somewhere else entirely. He didn't go in. Then, one Saturday morning, she texted him, "Walk with me. River path, 10 a.m. He stared at the message for almost 5 minutes. Then he replied, "I'll be there." They walked in silence for the first few minutes, the Charles River glinting beside them. It was early November, and the trees were holding onto their last red and gold leaves like they were afraid to let go. Did you keep any of my letters? She asked eventually. You only wrote one. No. I mean the ones I left you when we were still married. Little notes. On the fridge. In your suitcase. He smiled faintly. All of them. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. All? He nodded. They're in a shoebox. Top shelf of my closet. I used to reread them when I couldn't sleep. She said nothing, but something softened in her face. She slipped her gloved hand into her coat pocket, then looked up at him. I still paint you, you know. Not directly. But you're there. In all of them. In the storms. In the blue. Danielle's throat tightened. I think about you every day. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away either. From then on, they began to meet weekly. No labels. No promises. Just two people relearning the shape of each other's hearts. They went to bookstores again. Cooked together. He helped stretch her canvases badly, but she never corrected him. Sometimes, they argued, small things at first. But instead of walking away, they talked. For the first time in years, they actually talked. Winter came. Snow piled onto the city like a second skin. One night, after helping her hang a new piece in her gallery, he lingered at her door. Emily, he said, I still love you. I never stopped. I just stopped knowing how to be the person you needed. She didn't answer right away. She reached out instead, touching the side of his face. I'm not the same person either, she said. We're both scarred, but maybe we can be better now. Not perfect, just better. From that night on, they began again. Slowly, carefully. They didn't rush into declarations. They didn't pretend nothing had happened. They lived in the truth of it, the beauty and the brokenness. And somehow, that made it more real than it had ever been. Spring came like a sigh. Her studio was filled with light again. He started leaving his toothbrush at her apartment. Oliver, the old Labrador, claimed her rug as his new home. It was subtle, unspoken, but undeniable. One afternoon, while she was cleaning old canvases, Emily found the sketch she'd made years ago, the one from The Dream, of an old couple on a porch in Italy. The paper was yellowing, the edges torn. She brought it to him that evening. I used to think this was a fantasy, she said, but now I wonder if it's still possible. He took the sketch in both hands, studied it, then looked at her. I think it is, he said. I think it always was. We just got lost for a while. That summer, they took a trip, not to Italy, not yet, but to a quiet coastal town in Maine. They rented a small cabin. No TV, no distractions, just them, a porch, a view of the sea, and old memories made new again. One night, as waves crashed in the distance and fireflies blinked across the yard, Emily curled beside him and whispered, You broke my heart. He kissed her hair. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it whole again. She nodded, eyes closed. Good, because I'm tired of painting in grief. He reached for her hand. Then let's paint in forgiveness. Years later, they would look back at their story not as a tragedy, but as a journey. One filled with mistakes, yes, but also with courage, with growth, with two people who chose, again and again, to try. They never remarried, not officially. But they wore rings, simple, unmarked bands, not to symbolize a contract, but a quiet commitment, a private vow. In the end, their love was no longer about the fairy tale. It was about the resilience, the choice to stay when it was easier to leave, the decision to believe that even the deepest wounds could become something beautiful. Emily painted a new piece that year. It wasn't abstract. It was soft, clear, unmistakable. A porch, two chairs, an old man reading a book, a woman sketching the sea, and above them, the sky, a vast wash of blue. Daniel hung it in their hallway. Every morning, they passed it on their way to the kitchen. Every morning, they remembered. Not the pain, not the betrayal, not the distance, but the letter, the walk, the choice to begin again.